Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Recato of Recato Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. What's up, guys? Let me just get the YouTube stuff working and get it sent out real quick. And then we'll get into this. Hold on. Oh, my gosh. How I really wish that this Rumble Studio would create the YouTube link prior to the show starting. But hey, right now we work with what we got. What we got. All right, how you guys doing tonight? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing okay. You didn't ask. You didn't ask. Little one-sided. Little one-sided. Let me one last thing. I just gotta tweet this out. Go. Quote tweet. Also live on YouTube. Bam. Right now. Post. Now would be a good time to insert ads. Oh, would it? Thanks. Jerk. Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing? I think I'm about all set here. Let me just get this chat popped out so I can see it over here. Tonight, we are talking about some pretty good stuff. We are talking about immunity for President Trump. This is a massive Supreme Court decision, although it also isn't a massive Supreme Court decision. That's kind of the weird part about it, is like it's a big decision, but it's not really going to change much of anything because of how this has always worked. It's always worked this way. The president has always been effectively immune from prosecution for official acts. And we'll talk about why it's extra silly that people are having a hissy fit about it and who these people are. Because many of these people are just fine with things like qualified immunity, but the president's effectively getting something very akin to qualified immunity. So we've got that on the menu. There's also a ruling on January 6th. Protesters kind of limiting the scope of obstruction charges that were raised against them and forcing courts to do actual work, which always pisses people off when their political allies have to, or political adversaries, how do I want to say this? It always pisses people off when their political allies are forced to do work against their political adversaries. That one. That's what I wanted to say. That was very confusing to get through. I'm sorry. But basically, they want complicated court systems that favor a defendant when it's their boy, right? But when it's the other guy's boy, they want very swift, punitive court systems that enact justice upon their opponents, right? That's how this works. That's how it's always been. We always want our political opponents punished to the maximum by the government, and we always want the government to have a hard time punishing our political allies. So we're going to talk a little bit about how ridiculous sort of that prospect is in regards to presidential immunity and, of course, these obstruction charges. And a lot of people are pissed off at Amy Coney Barrett over the obstruction charges, or maybe not a lot of people, but they're trying to make it out like a lot of people are. I don't know. Who fucking cares? Like, be mad at a Supreme Court justice all you want. They already rendered their decision and you're bound to it. So I guess if being mad helps you, be mad, but it's not going to really get you anywhere in the long run. But we'll be talking about that. And of course, we've got specific details of my case coming at a secret appointed time in the stream. I'll wink 38 times and do like an ear grab and like some signals to the dugout or whatever. And then we'll have an update on my case that is super secret and very specific, and no one can know it. And I really hope that the police don't find out. So make sure to tell all your friends to be here for that. I'm definitely not lying to pump up numbers or anything. I'm definitely going to do it. If we only hit the goal of secretly reaching 40 trillion viewers. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm not going to give you any specific details about my case. Obviously, that's clickbait in the title. That is clickbait in the title because I wanted to fill up 100 characters. I think people still expect me to come in and do that. Like, oh, he'll talk about his case. All right, sure. Sounds good. Well, let's hit a couple super chats and then we'll get into this, into these topics. And, you know, like I said, we'll try and address all the super chats that do come in as much as possible. And maybe we'll just chat for a little while because, hey, it's 4th of July week, guys. It's 4th of July week. It's the week of liberty and independence, where we gained our independence from England only to swiftly reimpose the exact same taxes that England wanted to impose upon us. Good job, guys. But we did it our way, like Frank Sinatra, if he were earlier. Yeah. Randall McCollum says you could read Sotomayor's dissent and just say that is what impeachment is for after each section. Of course, that's the whole point. And that's what everybody is like. I can't believe it. I can't believe the president's immune from murdering everybody as an official act. Well, if it's an official act and he has a political will to do it, otherwise, #impeach. It's not difficult. It's a very simple process. It's baked in. Ola Kyle says, are you afraid one of your kids will turn into Chandler Halderson after all the stuff you've done to them? You know, I am. I'm afraid of that. What I'm really worried about, though, is that I won't have put on enough weight by the time they decide to eat me that I'll taste good. That's my biggest concern right now, is trying to bulk back up. So when they take a bite, and hopefully they'll share, like with their siblings, we've always taught them the benefit and importance of sharing. Hopefully they'll share with each other. And when I want them to at least have a good experience, right? So I got to fatten up a little bit. I got to get some natural seasonings, probably eat clean for a little while, maybe switch to like a grass-fed vegan diet like Tess Holiday. You know, Tess Holiday is not on a vegan diet because the whole planet isn't a desert. Harvey Weinstein. Oh, wait. Seize the Day says on time is a good look and great upgrade. Happy Canada Day. Ew. Why is it Canada Day? Why does Canada get July 1st? What happened? Let's go back to that last super chat for a second. Let's get rid of that silly hypothetical and get into the real meat of this situation. Pun intended. If someone ever does off me, I hope they try it. Like, I hope they take a bite. I'm dead. Like, I don't care. Like, I want a chunk taken out of somewhere. If I'm getting murdered, it better be like, there better be some payoff. Because I'm not happy. I'm not happy about getting murdered in the first place. I at least want to know that there was a strip taken out. Harvey Weinstein says, would you let Boogie, there's a shit emoji and then like a blast emoji in your 4 for 5K. Hail DSP Black Fist. Shit blast in your 4? What's the 4 for 5K? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what my 4 is. Matt, hi. I would just like to ask, why is it harder to get Social Security disability income if you have autism than if you're a veteran with a mental health problem? That's a good question. I would imagine because people with autism like take filling out the form more serious. I'm not basing that on anything other than like being mildly silly, but some people when they're filling out forms, they like stretch truths or whatever. I shouldn't say they stretch truths. That's a little unfair. Let me humbly suggest that some people who are acquiring Social Security disability income are willing to be a little more liberal with the categorizations of their ailments. I'm not actually putting this on veterans. I'm mostly putting this on um, low income people who are assisted in acquiring Social Security disability income by agents of a socialist sort of regime, like like a local state entity that might be self-interested in enrolling people in Social Security disability income for the purposes of bringing federal dollars to the state. How's that? Is that a nice way to put it? Social workers have this uncanny knack for filling out forms in a way that can make even wealthy people look impoverished for the sole purposes of acquiring federal money at the small expense of sending some of that federal money to a person, who's filling out a form. They do that a lot. And just, I mean, you could probably go into depending on where you are, you can go into a county building, a social services building, and talk to a social worker and have a middle class income, and they will bend over backwards trying to figure out how to squeeze you into a program. And what you can figure out from that is that they're motivated to do so because, one, the existence of their job is dependent on that. Two, their departments benefit from having more and more people on there. Three, federal dollars are typically dependent on state expenditures towards those sorts of programs. So yeah, give that a shot. Chris the Christ Homism, Chris Thomasism, Christ Homism says, bro, you ain't getting out till PlayStation 12. That's a long time. Damn. I wonder what PlayStation 12 will look like. There's no way that they still are selling hardware by then, right? Because if we go with production cycles, it's like 10 years for each generation. So if we're on 5 and 12, that's like 120 years from now. Let's even shorten it to 60 years from now. In 60 years, are we still selling gaming hardware? Is that going to be happening? Or is there going to be just sort of like a ubiquitous availability of some sort of screen with the ludicrous amount of subscription services attached to each one? And like each one will come with an ad-free option. And if you don't do that, like the ad-free option, of course, is going to include some limited amount of proprietary ad revenue and ad sales that are generated based specifically on your needs and like your blood type and your DNA and whatever you ate that morning. But like I'm preparing. And I think of like the marvelous universes that have been imagined in like movies like AI or movies like Minority Report or Back to the Future, anything that has sort of that futurism to it where we're looking at what life might be like. And I know they're always inaccurate on the years, but we can get a sense like as the years progress, what our updated version of the future looks like. And if you look at like Minority Report and AI, you see some pretty interesting sort of concepts. But when you look at those and you're like, oh God, it's like, it's going to be this, but ads just everywhere, just ads, advertisements. And it's that scene in Minority Report when he's walking through the mall and it's like they do the retinal scan and the personalized advertising as you walk by. Oh my God. It's going to be that everywhere you go all the time. Like when he gets in the car and it like drives itself, or like iRobot with Will Smith, same thing. Like you get in the car and drive, it's like, oh, you're not going to be driving. Well, here's some news for you. I'm going to do 2 hours of ads on your commute to work. Sorry. That's going to be fun. Like, can I please not do this? Please authorize a distribution of 160 American Chinese dollars into your car account so you can disable ads for this ride. You're like, but I'm only going to make $150 today. It's too bad. Ads. Here, have more Pfizer. That's the shit that is going to be happening. But I really don't think, I mean, mark me down on this one. In 60 years, if I'm wrong, you can come call me a fucking idiot. I don't think we're going to be selling gaming hardware all that much longer. I think that a lot of the hardware is going to be cloud sourced. There will be giant servers for a lot of it. Just giant servers for the big AAA style companies, Google, Microsoft, Sony. They'll just have a giant thing. And then everything will be cloud-based interactivity that'll be available on any screen that's around anywhere. It'll all be subscription service based or some sort of credit system based where you're refilling it like a fucking track phone, every 2 hours, so you can do another headshot on Call of Duty. And you can get the aimbot attachment and all of that stuff. Real quick, I was reading an article today about the only guy who has a Neuralink, where Elon Musk gets to control the guy's thoughts or whatever. Did you guys see him? I think he was paralyzed when he like swimming or something. I think he hit his head or broke his neck or something, I guess. I don't know. I don't read much about the guy. I don't care about him. But he's the first guy, and there's some video games he's been playing that actually work with Neuralink. He's like, it's like cheating because it's like having an aimbot on at all time. I guess he's like his reticle starts moving and stuff before he's even consciously thinking about it. Like he's just picking up on where he wants to shoot. Then I thought that was like cool. I was like, well, that's good. But what they need to do is make they need the Neuralink racism stat detector, right? Where they make the enemies various obvious races, like a guy with a sombrero or whatever running around, and like see how much faster he shoots various races of people. That'd be terrible. See, this is why I don't like Neuralink. It's like, oh yeah, I'll be way better at Call of Duty than Dr. Disrespect because I'm not like typing to a minor or whatever. Or maybe Doc would be really good because he could like use his conscious thoughts to type out messages to a minor, but like his subconscious thoughts would be just shooting black people on Call of Duty. But like, could you imagine? It's like I'd be worried the entire time. It's like, damn it, what if I killed too many brown people in this session? And then it's like, your Neuralink is shut down for 36 hours for your re-education. It's like, no, no, I got a tournament coming up. That'd be awful. Like it's funny until you realize that they'll shut you down. Well, sorry, you get re-educated. By the way, the Neuralink implant is going to display to you race sensitivity training behind your eyelids while you sleep. Oh, God. It's like an episode of Black Mirror, except I broke that mirror, so it's an episode of White Mirror. Pendar says, looking good. Glad to see you. Hey, thanks, Pendar. You too. Justin DGBZ says, what are your thoughts on distributism? Distributism. I don't have thoughts on distributism. I'd have to look it up. I mean, it sounds let's see, distributism. An economic system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by as many private owners as possible for the purpose of self-reliance for its citizens. Wait, what? An economic system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by as many private owners as possible for the purpose of self-reliance for its citizens. It sounds like capitalism except for poor people. Right? Like it's like, well, capitalism, it's like, I worked hard, I can own more things. It's like, you didn't work as hard, so have stuff to own. I don't know. I was in church, not this past week, but the week before, I think it was, we were talking about the parable of the talents. And anytime I come across like socialist systems or distribution-based economies, I guess, whatever distributism is, I just think, what would Jesus do? And what he did was he gave the least to the person who had the least, and they screwed that up. And he's like, yeah, don't do that. Person who was good with much will be trusted with more. Person who wasn't good with anything shouldn't get much at all. And I definitely think that Jesus was specifically talking about the intricacies between capitalism and communism and, sort of centralized planning economies versus grassroots-based ground-up economies and the aggregation of wealth. That's definitely what Jesus was talking about. He wasn't making any sort of allegorical or parabolic sort of look at faith or like the way that God deals with the faithful or anything like that. He was definitely just talking about economic systems. I know this because I listen to Joel Osteen, and Joel Osteen is very convincing. I don't know if he talks about this at all. I don't listen to Joel Osteen, but his cheekbones are nice. So I look at those from time to time when I'm feeling down. But no, I don't know. It seems to work out that if you decide that there's a bunch of people who don't have any money and you should give them control over a business, it's not going to go well. I think that's the main thing. It's the main point against that. Um, I'm not. I'm not a big fan of that sort of system because there are times in my life where you shouldn't have given me a business to run, which is all of them. But there are also times in my life where I wrested running a business from the hands of other people, and it went okay for a little bit. So I don't know. It's a but you shouldn't just give that to people because if they didn't make it, if they didn't earn it, and if they didn't build it, they're not going to be faithful in dealing with. They have no skin in the game. And when you have no skin, you're probably in Hellraiser 2, coming out of a mattress, eating a guy who's got bugs all over him. Pendar says we only need to dial up for EverQuest. True that. Will I debate Destiny on the Supreme Court ruling? I mean, if he wants me to debate him on the Supreme Court ruling, he hasn't asked or anything. Sure, I guess. Didn't I already debate Destiny on the Supreme Court ruling? Didn't I already say that Donald Trump was likely going to get presidential immunity, at least for official acts? I feel like that was my position. Now, my position is more extreme. I think he should have the president should have immunity for unofficial acts as well, because that's what impeachment is for. But I think that was my position that I defended in the debate. And he's like, well, what if he murders his political opponent? It's like, probably should impeach that guy. Don't know if we want that one around. And we're going to look at an article already calling for Biden to drone strike Trump, which we shouldn't be surprised that people want Biden to drone strike Trump. And we shouldn't be surprised if Biden does, because Obama drone struck American citizens. So we shouldn't be surprised of that. But the question is, Anwar al-Awlaki sounds like a made up name from fucking Star Wars, doesn't it? Like some guy in the Jabba the Hutt slithered across, got pregnant. But anyway, Anwar al-Awlaki was drone struck by Obama, right? Blew him up, blew up his kid. And the question is, should he be criminally liable for that act? Well, he has, we'll just call it official presidential immunity from that act. Okay. Well, if we don't like it, though, maybe we should impeach him. Like, we find some error in his action. Like, let's say, I don't know, that it's a Fifth Amendment due process violation because the guy's sitting there ordering Yemeni coffee, and all of a sudden he gets a fucking Predator drone missiling him to death. Like, maybe that's a due process violation. My national security professor would have argued, no, he received plenty of process because of the protocols that go into a drone strike authorized at the highest levels. So he would say that process due was given to al-Awlaki. He's a U.S. citizen, sure, but he's in a foreign non-combat zone. But he's probably a foreign agent at least, and definitely for a hostile regime. So, and the authorized use of military force arguably gave him permission to do so as an enemy of the state. So there's a bunch that went into that decision, and he got blown up. Did he get the process he was due? A lot of people say no. Some people say yes. Some of it is based on people's opinions of Obama, and others maybe based on principles of the Constitution or anything else. But it's not an easy question to answer. And that's the whole fucking point, right? It's not an easy question to answer. So maybe we shouldn't just allow a criminal prosecution because Anwar al-Awlaki got blown up, and maybe we're not comfortable with the president of the United States being able to assassinate a private citizen without a trial. I'm not comfortable with that. But he also was an asshole who kind of deserved it. So maybe it wasn't so bad. I don't know. Maybe it's like, this one went all the way to the president. Maybe we let that slide, but maybe we don't. And if we don't, then impeach the fucker. Just do that. It's like we have a system built up around this. Okay, what about asking the vice president to implement a false slate of electors? Is that an official action? That's a good question, isn't it? It's tough. These are hard questions to ask. That's why probably we don't want the president hamstrung by the idea that his official act may be criminal or may not. And I don't know if anybody can actually conclusively answer your question there, Liam, because The Constitution merely orders the vice president to read the electoral votes. Every slate of electors that comes in, he is to read them. If a president presents to the vice president some case, I don't mean like a case, like a precedental case. I mean, like he makes the case that a slate of electors is invalid and an alternate slate of electors is valid. If he were to make that case to the vice president either has the authority to accept or unaccept the president's proposal, right? We can say that. Maybe we can say that, though. We don't actually know if the vice president has that authority or not. It hasn't been conclusively stated because the Constitution only commands that the vice president shall read the slate of electors. What if the vice president reads the slate of electors, including the false electors, but just nobody accepts the false electors' votes? If you want to call them false electors, I'll just adopt your nomenclature here for that purpose. But if you want to call them false electors and say, okay, well, he's going to read the false elector slate, and you go, all right. So someone might be like upset about that, but does reading them do anything? Does that make them official? We don't know. And I know that makes people really fucking uncomfortable, but just remember that until today, we didn't know that the president had immunity from official acts as president. We thought he probably should and did, and it kind of looks like he did because of the civil case that came out giving him immunity for official acts in civil liability. So probably should mirror the criminal one should mirror the civil liability. That was why it was such an obvious ruling and kind of the least interesting outcome we could have. So we kind of knew that, but we didn't know. No, today we know. And until we get a ruling on what the vice president's actual role is in reading the electors, can the vice president send a slate of electors back to the state and say, no, try again, you fucked up? Maybe. I don't know. And you don't either. And that's the best part. That's why I hate using terms like false electors and stuff like that. Well, it's an alternate slate of electors. They may be valid. They may not be. They may become valid. The question is, can you tell a state that it doesn't have the authority to recant its slate of electors and send you a new one? At what point do they lose it? At what point did they have it in the first place? All of these questions aren't actually answered anywhere. And that's the beauty of the Constitution. And the really cool thing is we have two options on it, right? We can either answer the questions by passing a fucking amendment that just clarifies something and go, you know what? We don't want to deal with this. We came close to dealing with this in 2020. We go, you know what? Let's just clarify the vice president's role. All right. Let's say he has to do it, but he has to sit on a plunger while doing it. And for each false slate of electors, he has to drop an inch. Ow! My mic got pinched. We can just put that in the Constitution. You can do that. Or we can wait till it becomes a problem and we can bring it to the Supreme Court and they can clarify it or refuse to clarify it. And then we have to pass a fucking amendment. But the mechanism is already there and always was. It always was. And I don't see why it's such a big problem for people. They're like, oh my God. Like, the founders thought we'd be amending the shit out of this document. And we don't. We don't do it very often. Ace of Aces says, are you ever going back to court case commentary? Not sure why you gave that up. Well, Ace of Aces, I would love to. I never gave it up. It's always something I've wanted to do. I just didn't have daytime available. I still don't quite have it available, but the horizon is looking a little sweeter. So we'll see. But yes, I would love to. And I would love to soon because I think Baldwin's trial is coming up. Courtney Clenny's trial is coming up. Sarah Boone's trial is coming up. All this shit is about to hit, and a lot of it would be really interesting to cover. So yes, I would love to. Harvey Weinstein says, Nick, being real, I used to work at a Wells Fargo branch across from a Section 8 apartment. The SSDI abusing addicts were the biggest entitled assholes. Oh yeah, dude. I when I worked at Wells Fargo in downtown St. Paul, plenty of SSDI people came in. They would get their $603 check on the 3rd of the month. Well, their direct deposit on the 3rd of the month. The 4th of the month, they would come into my desk area, ask me to check their balance, and it'd be, overdrawn by $200, like without fucking fail. And they'd be carrying a bag of Foot Locker, like boxes, like several Foot Locker boxes. And no, they weren't like orphans that they were delivering to be, they were shoes. It was just shoes. So many fucking shoes. I saw so many shoes at Wells Fargo. I haven't worn shoes since. Carrie says, Trump 2024, bitches. It's the only way. Hey, Nick. Peace. Hey, what's up, Carrie? Thank you for being a member of the channel. Official R.I. Nirvana says, Nick gave his daughter nose candy. Nick for jail 2024. No, I didn't. But okay. You can run with that narrative all you want. Don't know what else to say. Xander's Rants says, oh, shit. What happened to taking a stand and not sitting with low energy? I'm still trying to work out the logistics of being able to interact with the screens, see the see all the chats and do all of my interactions. I need to probably work on moving at least a mouse, if not getting my touch screen actually closer so I can control things. But James Gardner says, fuck the police, straight from the underground. Exactly. They're coming down on me because I'm brown. All right. With that, let's get into these topics a little bit. Let's start hitting this immunity thing. Should we start with the Biden drone strike Trump? Where's that one? I saw this article earlier with a headline. It was an opinion piece. Well, we'll go with this one. This isn't the one I was looking for, but it doesn't really matter. Sip up on that special tea. This tea is delicious. You should try some. Come here, I'll give you some. Give it right to you. Bad Dragonite says, imagine Resident Evil 5 overloading the racism Neuralink. Wait, was that the one in South America or Africa? Because they had one in South America and they had one in Africa. And they were like more mad about the African one. And I was like, but all those innocent tacos. Let's see. Here we go. Let me share this screen. Whoo, slick. Rumble Studios working well tonight. I'm little. So here we go. Here's Trump. Nobody does this better than me. I've got a hand. It's a big hand, bigger than Marco Rubio's hand. It's a great hand. Here we are in America. I learned this from the Black Panthers. I was very good with the blacks. Better than any other Republican candidate and better than some Democrats, frankly, with the blacks. Robert Byrd, terrible with the blacks. The Supreme Court has issued its ruling on Donald Trump's immunity case, stating that he has partial immunity from criminal charges in his election interference case. Cool. The former president hailed the development as a big win for democracy, as Democrats claim the ruling had handed him the keys to a dictatorship. They really didn't. There's not like a way. I don't know how they come to this. Like, well, now he can be a dictator. It's like, I mean, for 4 years, every president's a dictator for 4 years. That's kind of the point. But what do you think he can suddenly do? What do you think he can suddenly do? Oh, and I've been waiting for the stupid question. Guys, the dumb question has been asked in chat. Thank you, Liam. You are our resident punching bag today. I'm sorry, it's nothing personal. It's just your questions are greatly bad. He said, would it be cool if Biden drone striked? Is it striked or struck Trump as an official action? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of badass, right? Like, that's kind of cool. But do you mean would it be okay? The answer is, if it's an official action, then yes. Are you uncomfortable with that? It seems like it. But the answer is yes. If it's an official action. How do you make it an official action? Well, you would likely have to build a pretty significant case that Donald Trump was an existential threat to the Constitution or the structure of this country. Treason is not an easy case to make. Treason against someone like Donald Trump would tend to involve the arrest of someone like Donald Trump. Something that we have seen, by the way, can be accomplished merely by sending him a letter. Let's go back and clarify this. Donald Trump was the massive threat to America that Joe Biden faces, was defeated by the American criminal justice system by them saying, please come get booked for your charges. And he went, all right, I'll be right there. I've got my own plane. I can be there in a little bit. And he shows up and they booked him in. The mugshot seen around the world, right? All it took was a letter. So if you're going to drone strike him, you have to get to the proper hypothetical. You can't just say, well, what if? Yes. Well, what if Joe Biden wanted to rape babies as an official action? They're not his daughter. You're not in the shower with him. How do we get there? How do we get to that being an official action? That one's a little less plausible as a path, but for Trump, you could make an argument. You could at least start telling a story. Donald Trump gets deeply in bed with Russia, for example. Russia has plans to disrupt NATO and throw the world into turmoil. During those plans, there's a secret sort of mission that's going to activate agents in the United States, plus send agents through submersibles with cool torpedo tube, deployment systems where they'll launch giant sperm-shaped transports that'll belch Russian soldiers onto the shores of Washington, D.C., and they'll take over. And Trump's going to let them into the Capitol building just like the Capitol Police did. So you get to a place where you have to create an actual reason to drone strike someone as an official action. And then you go, could Biden do that? And you go, well, maybe. But right now, what we know is that if you want Donald Trump to appear for a criminal trial, what you do is you either arrest him or send him a citation, like every other citizen on the planet. And if he doesn't show up for his citation, then you issue a warrant for his arrest. And then you coordinate with whatever state he's in or whatever country he's in for extradition to the proper jurisdiction. And then you arrest him. This is not complicated. It's done all the time to American citizens. So you can't just say, can he drone strike Trump? Would that be cool? Well, if he needed to be fucking drone strike, then yeah. But it's a hard case to make at present. But if you get to that hypothetical where Trump is somehow a danger to the country, a real one, not like, oh, he might win the presidency. That's not a danger to the country. Like, Trump might win again. What are we going to do? I don't know. Probably have 4 years of economic prosperity and a bunch of shitty jokes that you don't like. There you go. And beautiful flowing hair in the breeze. Cool. That's what's going to happen if he wins. Same thing that happened last time. But if you want to drone strike him, you come up with a reason. So that's only the first step. You have to have a plausible reason to drone strike someone. That's the first part. So then you make the case as president. You talk to your chiefs, military chiefs, whoever's running the drone program. Shouldn't be the CIA unless Trump's overseas. Probably the U.S. Air Force. U.S. Air Force drone program. You talk to the chief of the Air Force or whatever his fucking title is. Grand Admiral, Grand Lord. I don't know. Who cares? Paterfamilias. You talk to the highest ranking Air Force official. You say, we need to drone strike this motherfucker. And then it goes down the chain of command. But that case is made. There's review of these orders. Like, a lawful order of the president isn't just whatever the president orders. Because the president can't just nuke California and say, I have the keys to the nukes. Let's just get rid of California. Somebody else pushes the button. And that person's like, My niece is in California. I don't know if I want to do that, sir. Maybe we should have this one reviewed. And that's what the 25th Amendment is for. You have to come up with an actual plausible reason to do the thing that you're talking about. We go with the hypothetical. Can President Biden walk down the street shooting children in the head one by one as an official action? Well, no, because even at close range, he'd be too jittery and he'd probably lose focus and he wouldn't be able to hit them. But if you can somehow find a way that that would be a justifiable presidential action, then yes. And the way around is if you don't like that action, impeach them. And if a president issued an illegal order to assassinate a political rival, impeach them. Just impeach them, or 25th Amendment them, because maybe they're just crazy. Like maybe something pops in their head and they're just crazy, right? They're sniffing leather cleaner or whatever. That's delicious, wonderful leather cleaner. I feel terrific. I'm very horny for killing Joe Biden. Blam. You've got to have the proper reasoning behind it. And everybody goes to these hypotheticals as if presidents just do this. And like, well, they were only constrained by the law before. Nope, they really weren't. They weren't constrained by the law before. This isn't a new license to do this. They actually have the exact same ability to drone strike their political opponent that they had yesterday, the day before, and the day before, and the day before. None of that ever changed. And people so hung up on this thing like, well, now he could do it. No, he already could. And he would have had immunity then. We actually know that because the decision today didn't grant presidential immunity. It recognized presidential immunity. And if he did it yesterday, he would have been impeached. If he did it today, he'd be impeached. So here we go. What exactly did the court decide? What happens next? And is it true that presidents can now send Navy SEALs after their political rivals? Yes, they can. Yes, we can. Just like Obama could. Yes, we canned his way into office. Yes. Only if it's justifiable. Only if the Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6, like going after a political rival isn't that simple. The order has to go down the fucking chain of command to the SEAL team, and everybody has to greenlight it. The Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump may be immune from charges of attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The court split 6-3 along partisan lines to rule that presidents cannot be prosecuted for actions that fall within their core constitutional roles. Let's do a quick review. What is the core constitutional role of the president? Some might suggest that communicating via a speech from the White House with the American people about election integrity is probably an official act in a hotly contested election. You may not like what he says. You may not like what he said. Guess what? I don't like what most presidents say most of the time. That's not a crime. So, should be. For all the other shit that's a crime, that should be a crime. If I don't like it, it should be a crime. But it's not. So, just because you don't like what a president says at some speech doesn't make the speech not an official act. It's given from the White House. It's televised. It's about the election. The most discussed topic of that day. You may say, well, it's part of his campaign. No, his campaign was over. It's January 6th. He's not speaking as Donald Trump, the candidate. I know they like to make that case. Well, he's speaking as Donald Trump, the candidate, not Donald Trump, the president. Well, first of all, they're one and the same. And official actions often overlap with political actions for an election. Actions of an office overlap with actions of a candidate constantly. You can't separate them. In fact, laws are passed as political actions, right? Laws are passed as a campaign act very often, and policy talks happen as campaign talks, but they're also official talks. The State of the Union address is a fucking campaign speech. during election years. So you can't just say, well, it's around an election, therefore. No, not therefore. He still gets to have his status as the president, especially when it's a matter of national intrigue. Now, could he stray off topic during that speech and make it an unofficial act? Yeah, of course. But the president has a lot of power to communicate with the American people. He's the mouthpiece of America to America and abroad. And a couple broads, if you know what I mean. He is the mouthpiece. So when he's acting as the mouthpiece, now you're presumptively under the auspices of his official actions. You have to show why it's not. Okay? So that's an important thing to remember, because people are like, well, I don't like what he said about the elections. Like, well, too fucking bad. I like what Joe Biden said about the economy. That doesn't make it a campaign speech that he can now be prosecuted for or whatever. Official acts are entitled to a presumption of immunity. Oh, wow, neat. Meaning the burden is on Jack Smith. The special counsel brought the indictment against Trump to rebut the immunity claim. Now, of course, Jack Smith, this is a thing I haven't talked about, but I believe this motion may be pending. And pending motion isn't as fun as ongoing motion. But Jack Smith, as special counsel, may not actually be special counsel, like for real, which is funny. And if that's true, it's even funnier. This is another one where we don't know the answer, but the answer kind of looks like Jack Smith isn't special counsel. For a brief rundown of that, and there are other people. I think Gouveia has been covering this a lot more than I have. So I'll give you a synopsis. Barnes, I'm sure, has talked about it. But there's a coalition of smart legal scholars, not like me, but some smart legal scholars out there who filed a motion to disqualify Jack Smith as special counsel, or not even disqualify him as special counsel, but to ask the court to recognize that Jack Smith never was special counsel. So you can't be disqualified because he was never qualified, is the argument. And the reason we would say this is because special counsel is a United States attorney that is granted a special assignment by the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice would need this when it runs into, effectively a conflict of interest. Since the Department of Justice operates under the executive branch, and therefore the president is the Department of Justice's boss, if you want to go after the boss, like Donald Trump, or even Merrick Garland, for example, or Joe Biden, or whoever, and whoever's up the chain of command from who you are, you have to get a special counsel, because they have an inherent conflict in that if you're going after Trump, Trump can just say, nope, actually, you can't go after me. You're fired. You're fired. You're unassigned. You're reassigned. Fill the water cooler. He could do that because he's the boss. But a special counsel is removed from that chain of command, and they are given special authority to proceed against their own, what would normally be against their own interest and authority. They're set aside. They've always been U.S. attorneys. U.S. attorneys are officials of the United States, which means they are appointed by the president. They don't go through the same appointment and or nomination and appointment process that other officials do, but they do have to go through the official process, and Jack Smith never was. So the argument goes, to be special counsel, you have to be a U.S. attorney. You have to be appointed and imbued with the authority of the Department of Justice to then segment off a piece of that authority under the statute to become special counsel to then pursue against the president. Jack Smith isn't that. Trump didn't appoint him as a U.S. attorney. He was a private attorney, and he was brought into this thing as special counsel. That may have been unlawful. And if it was, Jack Smith goes, goodbye, and they have to find someone else to do it. Can they? Maybe. Does it destroy the case? Maybe. Does it push the statute of limitations out? Maybe. Do we have answers to these questions? No. No, we just have good arguments. And there's probably good arguments as to why Jack Smith should still be special counsel. But it's going to get into the nuances of what the law says and what the law means. And as we'll talk about in the next ruling, where we talk about the obstruction charges, you get some disagreement there, even amongst like-minded people. Amy Coney Barrett separated on the obstruction charges for January 6th. saying just because a law was meant for one thing doesn't mean we don't allow it to expand to something else. Amy Coney Barrett seems to be a fan of things expanding. She doesn't want them sitting there withered and limp. She wants them to expand and become turgid as a baton to be used against the criminals or something. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a bit. But back to this immunity thing. Special counsel brought the indictment against Trump to rebut the immunity claim. District Court in Washington, D.C. will decide which charges Trump can claim presidential immunity from. So this is the problem that I've talked about with giving immunity from official acts versus unofficial acts. It's just because it's a problem doesn't mean it's the wrong move. Okay. It's easier if the president is blanket immune from criminal acts outside of impeachment, right? It's much easier then. However, if you're going to make the distinction, and you probably should say, well, because you don't want him just committing all sorts of other crimes for personal gain. So you probably should make a distinction. But if you're going to make it, now you have to have arguments over what is an official act versus what isn't an official act. In civil immunity, they went with the outer perimeter of official acts. So anything that even looks fucking close to an official act of president is presumptively an official act. This one, I think it's a little bit tighter, but either way, you're going to have an argument on all of these things. So now Trump's January 6th incitement case or whatever is going to be kicked down to the DC court, and they're going to have to go through each count and determine if the facts of each count amount to official acts of the president or not. There's official acts where he's out there giving a speech. You got to go peacefully, patriotically, tell them they're a bunch of garbage. You've got that. But then you've got, accusations that may come after he goes inside. Maybe he's playing Nintendo or whatever. And he says, well, I'd be really nice if someone hung Mike Pence from a lamppost. If he said something like that, and that was, heard by the nation's hangman, I don't know, I'm stretching here, but you can imagine at some point the officiality of the public communication might disappear and you might move into a personal act rather than an official act. Are some of the phone calls personal acts? Are those moves by the Trump campaign versus Trump as president? All of these have to be determined by argument before a court, and then they'll be appealed and appealed and appealed. And then eventually the Supreme Court will have to come up with some test to clarify, and then another test, and clarify even more. But that's the way the system works. Liam, buddy, that guy talking about SSDI for autism earlier, I think you have a case, my friend. Let's see. Cole Kiddo says, Nick, good on you for taking all the jokes and ribbing in stride, sending you some good vibes. Hey, thanks, man. Not much else you can do. Joe Brandon says, why would you read troll comments? I don't care if they paid you. Haters don't deserve recognition. I like you, Nick. I know that you're a good man. Because if you only read good things about yourself and you only present the good things about yourself, then you're not really being honest, right? I mean, as much as it sucks to read people being shitty, and let me enlarge myself for this one. Oh, Amy Coney Barrett's happy. Got large. As much as it sucks to read people saying things that you know to be not true, you go, well, but they don't know that they're not true. I know what happened. They don't know what happened. I can't say my side of the story yet. At some point, hopefully I'll get to. But until I do, I can't be mad at someone for thinking poorly or negatively about me. I'm not mad about people being assholes to me or thinking I'm a giant pile of garbage. I'm not mad about that. I'm mad about the circumstances under which they think that, right? I'm mad about the narrative that gets crafted to make someone think that, and my inability currently to respond due to legal issues. But that being said, that's not any commentator's fault or commenter's fault or super chatter or whoever. But if I sit here and try and paint this shiny, polished image of who I am, well, then I'm being a giant bitch. There are people out there who do that all the time. They try and spin every negative thing that comes up as them being some sort of like patron saint of I don't know, analism or whatever. And they're out there like, oh, I'm super cool. Like, no, don't worry, I didn't do any of that, or you can't say that about me. Well, here's the thing about me, guys. You can. You can say it. I won't like it. Might make me mad. Usually it makes me sad. But I'm not going to avoid it just because it's not fun or I don't like it. And I'll try and take some, I'll try and take some jokes with it, even if they're mean spirited. But hey, what the fuck else do you do? Hopefully, when I get to tell my side, people give it a listen. I think people would be less likely to listen to what I have to say when I get to say it if I censored everything they said leading up to that, or ignored it or avoided it. So I of course am not going to say anything directly related to some sensitive issue in my case. I can't do that right now. It's too much of a risk. So outside of those types of comments, yeah, I'll read them. I'll respond to them. And if it's a troll comment or not, look, I'm here to hopefully entertain people. And if some people are entertained by my misery, I'm still entertaining them, I guess. So, and if they want to send me $5 to like make me more miserable, that's the nature of entertainment, man. I mean, Kevin Spacey was out there. He's killing people. And he's like, well, I could probably do another movie soon. At least I haven't killed anybody yet that you know about. All right, here we go. June Wong says, hey, Nick, important question. Would Trump get more votes if he starts wearing powdered wigs and tricorn hats? Is he not wearing a powdered wig? No, he wouldn't. I'd hope he would, but he wouldn't. Nick Brown says, your Trump impression is pretty good. Some people say the best, definitely in the top 10. That's what I'm hearing from people. Your Trump impression it's pretty good. Some people say it's the best. Definitely it's in the top 10. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing from some people. White Mana Matters says, that's a deep Magic the Gathering joke. What's your take on what Dr. Disrespect did? Well, I don't know exactly what Dr. Disrespect did. I don't know. What I know is what Dr. Disrespect said, and I won't recount all of it. Dick and I went through it on Friday. We went through his statement, what he said he did. And I'll read between the lines a little bit of what happened. Dr. Disrespect admitted to having conversations with a minor on Twitch Whispers that he said sometimes leaned towards the inappropriate. So what we know from that is that Dr. Disrespect had inappropriate conversations with minors, or with at least one minor on Twitch Whispers. We know that happened. That's what he says. He says that nothing illegal happened, or no illegality or criminality was found. All right. We don't know how much illegality or criminality was looked for, but we'll take him at his word. So what he said is he had inappropriate conversations, multiple, according to him, with a minor, at least one minor, on Twitch Whispers, but we don't know of any criminal actions. All right. The other thing we know is that he had a long arbitration process with Twitch, and they did not complete the arbitration process, but what they did was settle, and the settlement involved, according to Doc, Twitch paying out his contract, apparently 7 figures, so somewhere less than 10 million, but more than one. And both Twitch and Doc entering into a non-disclosure agreement. That tells me a couple things. That tells me that Twitch was as scared of what Doc said to the minor getting out as Doc was. Because they're willing to keep Dr. Disrespect from sharing the conversations to clear his name. Reminder, Dr. Disrespect could have, in theory, said, no, here's my harmless conversation with a minor. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that course of action. Just that sentence alone is not good. It's not a great image. Look, here's my harmless conversation with this under 18 person. Oh, I've got the wall with your name on it. Right? Like, You don't want to say that ever. But in theory, if it really was a completely harmless conversation that was consensual, as he said, consensual conversations can be harmful and they can be inappropriate and they can be illegal. But let's just say he says it's a consensual conversation that strayed to the inappropriate. All right. He could, in theory, just disclose his sometimes inappropriate conversations to clear his name because everybody's speculating on what he did. He's like, no, I shouldn't have been kicked off Twitch. This is bullshit. Here it is. But they said, we want you to keep quiet on this. And he says, okay, I'm going to keep quiet on it. Now let's turn the tables around. Twitch, when Dr. Disrespect is sitting there pulling viewers away from Twitch, because, I mean, in theory, his loyal subscribers are following him to YouTube and saying Twitch banned him unjustly. He says, they didn't even tell me why. Hey guys, I have no idea why I was banned. Do you really not know? We don't know how true that was, but he says, I have no idea why I was banned. So he moves to YouTube, presumably brings some of Twitch's revenue to YouTube rather than on Twitch. Presumably a lot. Twitch could have said, hey, here's why we grease this fucker. Here's his inappropriate conversations with a minor. They could have done that. They didn't have to agree to a non-disclosure. And here's why I suggest that those messages look bad for Doc and Twitch combined, is because they paid him $7 million, or well, seven figures. Conflating that. I don't actually know. They paid him allegedly 7 figures to get him to sign the non-disclosure agreement. So if you do the math in your head, why would Twitch pay Doc to not disclose the conversations or the reason for being banned? Why would Doc agree to the non-disclosure if it was not justified? Now, I don't know, obviously. So I have to surmise what happened based on the available sort of facts and procedure that he has given us a little window into. And I go, why were you Twitch whispering with a fucking minor? You weirdo. What the hell were you doing? And why did those conversations stray toward the inappropriate? Like, why is that a thing that even happened? Look, if you have a business discussion to have with a minor as a streamer, first, you should probably be contacting the minor's agent, or you should ensure that any conversations or communications you have with that minor go through appropriate channels to ensure that for your own goddamn protection, you dummy, that it's not going to be accused to be inappropriate later. You would have a third-party witness act through agents like, hey, my lawyer or agent is going to contact your booking agent so we can set up a collaborative stream, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I want you to promote your thing at my booth at TwitchCon. And it's definite. When I say promote your thing at my booth, I do not mean jerk off in my hotel room. I'm literally sending this to your agent so you can come to my booth, not my hotel room, at TwitchCon and like actually promote your stream or product or whatever because I like your work or because blah, blah, blah. We have some sort of contract. Do it through appropriate channels. Like, why the fuck are you even at risk for this? I'm paranoid talking to a minor at a fucking coffee shop when they're making a coffee. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to answer the trivia question at Caribou. Why would I even know what a Disney movie says? I don't want to know. I don't want to talk to you. Make the fucking drink. Leave me alone. Why is he talking? So that's what I think. Don't fucking talk to minors, Doc. What were you doing? Why? Pam Ronning says, we are here to get you back, Nick. Cool. Thanks. George. To get me back. Get me back for what? Oh, shit. That might be bad. Oh, wow. Ron Vitters with a huge super chat. Well, a huge Rumble rant, I should say. Thank you so much. He says, stay true to yourself. I try always. Thank you for the support, my friend. Really appreciate that. New Bomb Turk says, dude, I still think you're the man. You lied to us, though. We'll have to talk about that later. The genius is still there. Your problem shine a light on my own. Let's all clean it up and stay brilliant. Lord of the Ree says, hey, Nick, just wanted to say thank you for not killing yourself, and you're not a piece of shit. Men, remember to check your balls. Always check your balls. Emorsk says, what do you think of 52 USC 2501? It's the duty of the Fed to protect voting. Your thoughts / opinion. Look at it. Let me take a quick peek. what this says. Okay, whoops. Here we go. National voter registration, findings and purposes. Congress finds that the right of U.S. citizens of the United States to vote is fundamental. Duty of the federal, state, and local governments to promote the exercise of that right, and discriminatory and unfair registration laws and procedures can have a direct and damaging effect on voter participation. I mean, anything that says that the federal government has a duty, especially, the executive branch is the executor of the U.S. Code and the Code of Federal Regulations. As the executor of that, any of those things help Trump's case when it comes to anything regarding an election, right? That makes it more likely than less likely that it's an official act. But everything is always an argument or a conversation. You can't just say it is one thing or not. It has to be figured out. We have to find the bounds of these sort of rules. But, anything like that will help him. It'll be incorporated into the argument. Allie B from Tennessee. Oh, shit. Says, keep your head up. You're doing great. Thank you. You're the only one who knows the truth, and everyone needs to stop with the hateful comments. Just know you have people who do care and pray for you and your family. And that's the most important part. Praying for my family first, me second is wildly appreciated. And whenever anybody asks what they can do, I mean, for most people, that's what they can do. And it does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. George Lopez says, a long time ago, you said the idea of innocent till proven guilty was dead. Fuck you. I'll prove you wrong. You're an innocent man that's not guilty. Fuck them, lol. Tell you what, it doesn't feel alive. It doesn't feel alive. And the moment you're in an orange jumpsuit, I think mine was blue. The moment you're in a jumpsuit in a jail, you go, I don't feel innocent until proven guilty yet. Right now, I feel guilty and I have to clamor my way to innocence. And that doesn't stop when you go home from jail. That doesn't stop. That doesn't stop when your charges are cleared. The American criminal justice system now, with the advent of mass media, which this happened a long time ago, by the way, and the sort of joyous reporting on criminal statistics, as law and order became a popular sort of topic, really pushed through the 50s through the 80s. I mean, law and order candidates are still, Trump's a law and order candidate. As that became more and more prevalent in mass media and more popular amongst the political class, because people don't want to get murdered or whatever, more and more we get people being accused by government, media reporting the accusations, even on a small scale. But when, take me out of this, because I exposed myself to the world, not as much as like Pee Wee Herman or whatever, but I jumped into it, right? Like I've chosen this life of semi-publicity for all of its boons and banes. But let's just say you're a normal guy, like you work at a gas station or like you're a mechanic or something, and you get arrested, and in your local paper, they report your arrest. I'll tell you what, the size of your town really matters there, but people are going to know and look at you, and you will not feel innocent until proven guilty. I mean, the moment that report comes up and someone walks up to you and they kind of look at you differently than they did a couple days before, you go, I don't feel so not guilty right now, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm supposed to. I have a presumption of innocence, and I don't feel like it's there because everybody believes that you did it because the government accused you of it and media reported it. And that's backwards from what it's supposed to be. We were supposed to have transparency so that people would go, the government's accusing this person. I want to know of what, and I want to know their basis for the accusation because I don't trust the government. That's how it was. It's not how it is anymore. And the media, in a weird way, legitimized the government because the media report legitimizes, for some people, the accusation. But again, don't think about me in this. Anyone who's got some level of, I fucking hate the word celebrity. I really do. But any level of sort of public exposure, I guess. Lots of those people like me chose that. And so we get more scrutiny as a result of that choice and as a result of the relative success, right? Like, more people know who you are for good or bad reasons, then you have to deal with more scrutiny. But ignore that and just go to your normal person. They don't feel innocent until proven guilty. I know this because I've represented those people too. And it doesn't take many cases. You know how many criminal cases it takes to find someone who doesn't feel innocent until proven guilty? One. Because it's every case. Even when they are completely innocent and didn't do what was said, they still feel like they're like, holy shit, everyone looks at me like I'm terrible. That's the way it goes. I don't know how to fix it. It's just a facet of the system. Let's see. Not a banned account says we still believe in you and the Constitution. Hey, thanks. Me too. Not a banned account says fighting charges put your life on hold either way. It does. It does. It's expensive. It's cumbersome. It's soul crushing. It's day destroying. And a lot of people don't survive it. When I say they don't survive it, I mean, like, they're not the same afterwards. I'm not going to sit and muse about it. I'm in a particularly biased situation on that topic. So go listen to Robert Barnes talk about the system, or Steve Gosney even. I don't know that he has any videos about it, but anyone involved in dealing with any lawyers involved in defending people in the criminal justice system, listen to how they talk about it and what it does to people. Don't listen to me because I'm motivated to make you feel a certain way. Go listen to them because they're smart dudes who have tons more experience in it than I do. And just listen to how they talk about their clients and what their clients felt and what their clients went through. How many of them maybe didn't make it. Like, some literally self-delete, or they get sick because they're under so much stress. It fucking sucks. Lord of the Ree says, well, they must have done something. Yeah, and I talked about this a long time ago. For me personally, it required a conscious choice. When I would drive by someone on the road and a cop had him pulled over, my initial thought for years and years and years, forever, was, what did they do? And it took a subtle change in how I approached that. Instead of thinking, what did they do? I say now to myself, what is the state accusing them of doing? And that's a change I made about a decade ago. And it's a weird shift and it's very subtle, but it is part of that getting back to the presumption of innocence. What's the state accusing them of? Can the state even prove it? Why am I assuming that the person pulled over is guilty? When I get pulled over, I don't feel guilty. Ron Vitter says you're over the target, hence the flack and bots. Limafau. Thank you. Boomer Wow says, whatever the outcome, everyone's alive. Redemption, forgiveness are on the table. Rooting for the Raggets family. Thank you. And again, at some point, I'll get to say a little bit more about it. Nick Naylor says, back to watching your full show. Gotten a lot better. Unfortunate what it took to get that way. Timing is everything. James Gardner says, mine was orange. You look cute in blue. It doesn't end. Fuck it. Have fun. Yeah, it's not going to. Some people will always be like, why didn't he just kill himself? It's like, well, I didn't want to do that. I tried to find something else to do instead. Let's finish up this Trump topic, and then we'll move on. Well, this Trump immunity topic, then we can move on to the January 6th obstruction thing because it's interesting, and then we'll go a little bit, we'll see what else is up on the menu. Let's see. Does Trump have immunity from the January 6th charges? The court made reference to some of the specific charges against Trump in its rulings to offer guidance to the lower court. Trump's attempt to replace his attorney general with a loyalist to oversee his claims of a rigged election is covered by absolute immunity because the president has the sole authority to dismiss executive officers. Wow. Pretty fucking obvious. Like, again, if you don't like the replacement of an executive officer by a president, just impeach them. Just impeach them. Pendar gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. Tara Rayner says, you are innocent, period, untested. Prayers for you and your family. And I won't say more. Love you. Also, I can't DM you on X because you don't follow your favorite Canadian. Sup, bruh? You owe me somehow. Well, maybe I do. I don't know. He also has a presumption of authority over allegedly putting pressure on Mike Pence not to certify the results of the 2020 election. The Justice Department will need to rebut this presumption. So, Liam, finally, your dumb question gets addressed here. Can Donald Trump say, hey, maybe you shouldn't certify the results of the election? I don't know. They don't look good to me. I've seen a lot of election results. He's a little shady. Maybe not great. Maybe we want to put those on hold, do an investigation. Pence's like, no, lightning eyes. It's like, it's like Trump, I'll conversion therapy you. But no, is that an official act? The vice president's kind of his subordinate, but the vice president has some role in reading off those electors. So what does that role mean? And maybe that one will eventually get us to that answer. Don't know. We'll have to find out. Trump's speech on the day of the January 6th riot, in which he called on supporters to fight like hell. Oh my God. I don't have my intro here, but all of the times any politician has said fight, and they're like, how could he say fight? You guys say fight all the fucking time. None of you do, but you all say it. They're like, he said fight. What Trump meant was to go murder Capitol Police and then Nancy Pelosi's severed head. No, he just said fight like hell. Is also likely covered as an official act, the court said. Yeah. Yes. Not only is it an official act, but let's just go with general free speech principles. The Trump, God damn it. The president has the right to an opinion and to express it. Why has the court ruled in Trump's favor? Oh, I don't know. It's the obvious outcome, because if every president were on the hook for everything, for being fucking criminally charged, you could just criminally charge every president the moment they get done. Be like, aha, going to prison, bitch. John Roberts, the Chief Justice, cited a number of cases, precedents, and constitutional principles in the 43-page opinion he authored. Real quick. John Roberts authoring this opinion is a fucking statement. That's a statement. John Roberts is a controversial justice as far as conservatism goes. Conservatives aren't big fans of him a lot of times. He saved Obamacare through very, very weaselly legal argument through the tax and spend power. Whole lot of shit. But it's a statement in two ways. First of all, a 43-page opinion on an unanswered question for fucking 2 centuries is not long. That's not a long opinion at all. Second of all, he's a Chief Justice. This is his legacy. Just like the Affordable Care Act decision was part of John Roberts' legacy, this is his legacy. Setting presidential immunity, criminal immunity for a president for official acts is part of his legacy. That's why he penned it. John Roberts has long been concerned about his legacy. It's evident in the cases he chooses to author. It's evident in the cases he chooses to break ranks and vote on. This one matters. This one was important to him. And he did it so it wouldn't be a Clarence Thomas opinion or an Alito opinion or one of Trump appointees. He wanted the world to know that this came with the authority of the court and the not bought and paid for conservative justice. And I say that with all the air quotes I can muster, because 1, he's not a conservative justice, and 2, he's not bought and paid for. Ron Vitters with another big chat says, put your money where your mouth is, people. Otherwise, shut the fuck up. Thank you, buddy. Tara Rayner says, oh, and you can get to stream the Karen Reed trial. Hung jury and lead detective relieved of duties right after. Wow. Maybe they'll keep going. Maybe they'll have another one. However, his key point was that a president could not properly fulfill the duties of their office if the threat of criminal prosecution dangled over them. Of course. He referenced a case made in 1982 against Richard Nixon, the former president, which established presidential immunity from civil litigation. I said that they would reference this and base the decision off of that. It was the obvious model. I don't know why anybody is surprised. I'm not saying this to say that I'm particularly smart or insightful. It was just the fucking obvious play. And I don't know why. Like, people are like, What? Well, they're not going to do it for criminal. Yes, of course. We actually give more deference to the individual in criminal cases than in civil. Why would they not extend the immunity? Quote, potential criminal liability are plainly more likely to distort presidential decision-making than the potential payment of civil damages, he wrote. Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Again, this is just common. During his time in office, Mr. Trump filled the Supreme Court with conservative justices, all of whom voted along political lines in his favor. They have to say this, right? They have to come up with some reason other than the basic reason. They have to come up with some justification. Well, it's because they're conservative. It's like, no. And liberals want this too. They just don't want it for Trump now. We're going to stop reading this. I don't know what the rest of it says, but I'm spending too long on this topic. I'm going to close with some final thoughts on just this particular issue. Then we've got more coming, right? More stream to come. Stream me, baby. Like that guy in the inflatable pool in San Francisco or whatever. But more stream to come. Oh, wait, we're going to go back to it. I lied. We're going to go back to it in a minute. But here's the main thought on the ruling itself. If liberal justices were doing this case, they would likely find the same outcome. They would just not use the same examples that Roberts used for Trump. But they knew all 6 conservatives were going to vote for this. They were allowed to split and make their dissent and to give all the reasons why a president should be prosecuted, blah, blah, blah. But they don't believe that. They just believe that Trump's actions don't measure up, and their dissent is the ability to point that out. It's not a genuine dissent on principle. I will argue. I will accuse them of being disingenuous. And I will say that their dissent has nothing to do with the underlying issue. Of course, a president should be immune from criminal liability for his official acts. Of fucking course he should. Any other opinion is retarded. There's no way around it. I'm sorry if you are an retard who thinks that way. They need to have it to effectively govern. Otherwise, we can constantly just prosecute our political enemies and we look like fucking Central America, or we look like, Central Africa, and it's a disaster. So they need that. And the liberal justices would recognize that if necessary. They just didn't like the things that Roberts would point out as Trump's actions that fall under his official duties because they really don't want to. And because they're trying to keep up their legitimacy and protect the image of the Supreme Court. And they have permission to because it was going to pass. It's 6-3. There wasn't a chance of 2 of the conservatives flipping. WSX says, in my jury pool, I was asked if I thought the defendant was guilty based on the charges. I said innocent for now, and it was their job to prove guilty. In my opinion, the defendant had a clean slate. I was excused. Preemptory challenge. Thumbs down. Yeah. Yep. They don't want someone like, the prosecution does not want someone like you on a jury pool. Rometer says, stream. Oh, God. Now I'm drowning in it. Let's take a second here to let's see what the hell here. What do we got? What is this? Let's see. Let's have a word from our sponsor today, which is rumble.store, sponsoring the stream. They're fully juiced in having presidential immunity, I guess. Rumble's exclusive apparel has finally arrived. So you can buy your Rumble shirts, your Rumble thongs or whatever. They're now offering 20% off all purchases in the Rumble store with the discount code DROP20. DROP20. If you want to support the brand that is fighting for free speech and fighting for our First Amendment, this is the best way to do it. They have tees, sweaters, hats, plus much, much more. Go to rumble.store and make sure to enter DROP20 as a promo code to get 20% off your entire order. Ladies and gentlemen, look, Rumble is cool, I guess. They have their free speech sort of support. They're here helping creators come out and not fear censorship like a president, right? Your official acts as a streamer are not going to get you kicked off of Rumble unless you do something pretty fucking bad. Hey, I'm still here, right? So, poor Rumble. Your official acts as a streamer not going to get you kicked off. They're not going to punish you for disagreeing with an election. They're not going to punish you for disagreeing with a government edict about vaccinations or trying to talk about medical truth or just speaking anything out against anyone in power. They are here. Are they perfect? No. Nobody can be perfect on freedom. They try, though, and they try harder than a lot of others. And while they try, people like me get to have a place to help try. We get to have a place to speak our minds and to say what we want. And that's pretty fucking great. So if you want to support that, go to rumble.store and then use promo code DROP20, get 20% off all of the apparel. Big thanks to rumble.store for supporting the show. Now I got to put that into the description. Here we go. Bam. Rumble.store, save. And I'll have to add this one. I'll add it to the Rumble. I think it adds it automatically to the Rumble link, but I'll do it later. Anyway, so there we go. There we go, guys. All right. Let's quickly get back to this Trump topic, mainly because I read the next headline, which is, could Biden have Trump assassinated? Now, let's see. I'm on the UK Telegraph, so let's see what the UCucks believe about one president assassinating another. Could Biden have Trump assassinated? Sonia Sotomayor, an associate justice. How do I describe Sonia Sotomayor? If a rutabaga was dumber, it would be Sonia Sotomayor. That's the best description. She is the worst. She's the absolute pinnacle of unachievement of a Supreme Court justice. She is the fucking worst justice. And it's by such an amazing margin. I don't even know. It's like comparing the economy of Cote d'Ivoire to the United States. And that's just her going up to the next worst justice. Like, it's that far down the fucking stairs. Biden couldn't even start walking up these fucking things. Oh, she's terrible. I don't even know what she says, and I know she's bad. Flightless says, Nick, it's good to have you back. These last few streams have been great company. Stay strong, brother. Praying for you and the precious fam. Thank you, Flightless. And Ron Butters with another huge super chat. Oh my goodness. He says, keep on keeping on, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. She dissented from the court's opinion, claimed the ruling would give presidents the power to assassinate political enemies. Quote, orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival. Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power. Immune, she said. Organizing a military coup to hold on to power, one, requires a complicit military. So what you might have is a good reason for one. I don't like military coups. I don't like martial law. I don't like them at all. However, organizing a military coup to hold on to power, something I'm not really aware of the United States ever fucking doing, but would that be an official act of president? Yes. Why? I don't know. Maybe he has a reason to do it, and maybe the military has a reason to agree. But people are not fucking yes-no machines, right? Like, if the president orders the military to go murder the firstborn, I mean, Pharaoh did, but if he does do that, well, not Pharaoh, it was Herod. God, I was going to make the opposite joke, but now it's, never mind. If he ordered SEAL Team 6 to go door to door, murdering the firstborn in every household. These guys have to go do it. They have to go, yeah, we're good with that. I don't know about you guys, but I know some military people. I don't know any SEAL Team 6 members, but I know some military people, and I'm pretty sure they're not lining up to go door to door to shoot American children. Most of them are not lining up behind a president to hold on to power either, because they take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And outside of extremely limited circumstances, they're not going to follow that order, because the amount of people they have to shoot to enact that order is tremendous. And the amount of people they have to shoot for no reason to do that. And at the end of the day, there's still people. There's a reason we haven't had a president order a military coup to hold on to power. It just doesn't fucking work. They know it's not going to work. It's not popular. They'll be hanging from the fucking lamppost. Now, let them take the guns away first, then we'll try, right? Why would they want to take the guns away? I don't know. Assassinating a political rival. We already talked about this. Is there a reason to assassinate them? There might be. And it's not just, look, he says he's got a 6 handicap. No way. No way. He doesn't have a 6 handicap. Joe Biden can't even spell 6. There's no way he's got a 6 handicap. Not once. I've seen a lot of handicapped people. Joe Biden's the worst of them. His score in handicap's very high, opposite of golf. He doesn't have that. So he should be assassinated. No, they're not going to kill Joe Biden over his golf game, man. Like it's not that simple. But again, in flipping the script, can Biden drone strike Trump? Well, I don't know if he has credible sources to show that Trump's involved in maybe a coup against the American people. Maybe he should be drone striked, right? It's not complicated. All right, here we go. Trump's lawyers had previously argued that a president could assassinate his political rivals without criminal prosecution as long as they were not impeached first. However, the court ruled against this. Again, ruling against this in a vacuum doesn't make sense. Could you assassinate a political rival for nothing? Well, no, of course not. But could you assassinate a political rival with the grounds of having the ability to assassinate someone? Sure. Trump, some of the more extreme commentators on social media urged Joe Biden, the U.S. president, to assassinate Trump and launch a drone attack on the Supreme Court. Beast. Assassinating a rival would only be consistent with the court's ruling if it fell within the president's official acts. Yes. Yes, of course. I just said it. U.S. president using the power of the state to kill political rivals and maintain his grip on power would be an unprecedented and hugely unlikely development. It's not unprecedented. Sort of. Look at Anwar al-Awlaki. There you go. Those are the circumstances under which we have decided a president has the legal authority to execute a drone strike on an American citizen. Here's the facts that we know. Aligned with the states involved in the authorized use of military force. Big one. First, you need authorization for military action to occur. Obama had that. Second, in a foreign land. He didn't do this on U.S. soil. Did not do it. Third, enough process and oversight that the ground information, the intelligence about who it was, and the difficulty in otherwise detaining the individual were worthy of sending a drone rather than sending a SEAL Team 6 in to effect an arrest and extradite him back to the United States or rendition him to a black site and waterboard him harder than, that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. I bet DJ Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's probably way better than the other one. But seriously, like we know the circumstances under which a president has legally drone striked an American citizen. There you go. You have the legal structure for it. So make Anwar al-Awlaki a political rival of the he was a political rival of the president. He wasn't running for president, but he was a rival of the president who spoke politically about topics. That's why he was assassinated. I don't necessarily think that assassination should have been legal, but it was. So now you have it. There, it's an official act. That's how you do it. Now, once those conditions exist, if you change any of the variables, you change the equation. If he's in the United States, can you drone strike him? Probably not. Anwar was in Yemen getting coffee with his kid or whatever, and a bunch of other bad people. That's why the drone strike happened. If he was in the United States, if he's just trolling around a Starbucks in fucking New Jersey, you think they're going to drone strike him? No. They'll arrest him. It's a different variable. But you have all of the structure there. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but it always is. Jason of TGA says, my MAGA plant Biden is destroying the Communist Democrat Party for good. Good. Our Manchurian candidate confirmed. Vector Zulu says, trying to help out a coworker, set up a GoFundMe so he can take time off to donate his kidney to his kid. Holy shit. Guys, I'll share this GoFundMe. I can't endorse it, but you guys can check it out and see if that's something that is something you want to support. Again, I don't endorse things that I don't have personal knowledge of, but you're certainly welcome. I put it in all 3 chats, so you can check that out. Rombater says, blam, blam, blam. It's amazing how much flack you're taking. Thanks, buddy. Okay, here we go. A U.S. president using the power of the state to kill political rivals and maintain his grip on power would be an unprecedented and hugely unlikely development. Stephen Wormiel, a law professor, specializing in the Supreme Court, said the notion was preposterous, but said proponents could argue it was covered by the president's role as commander-in-chief. Yes, of course they could. You could argue a whole lot of shit, but his role as commander-in-chief, if you have an enemy of the state and they're on foreign soil, like, do we think that if Donald Trump went to North Korea, for example, and was selling off nuclear technology, like diagram, or even some nukes that he left in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Like, I had a couple of these laying around. When I said I dropped a bomb in the bathroom, I really meant it. But he's got a suitcase nuke in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago that was left behind when he stopped being president. So he flies to North Korea. It's like, Kim Jong-un, you got a better golf game than Joe. You could beat me in a round. We'll do a 2-man scramble. You could probably grab a Korean woman or what. They look the same. And they do that, and you beat me, and I'll give you the fucking nuclear technology. Do we think that Joe Biden couldn't drone strike Donald Trump if he's selling a nuclear missile to fucking North Korea right now? Like, if he's meeting the head of state of North Korea? I mean, kind of might be an official act, maybe. What if he wasn't selling the nuke? What if he was surfing from Crimea or whatever with a Putin suitcase nuke to LA? I don't know. That's a long surf. I don't know if you can even get there. It doesn't matter. Let's say he's just doing, he's on a boat. He's on a Russian U-boat with nuclear codes. Can we not order the death of Donald Trump if he's on a fucking Russian submarine going to, fire a ballistic missile at Washington, D.C.? We'd probably blow up the submarine, knowing that he's on there doing that. We could probably do that. It's probably there. These are ridiculous situations, but they're not hard to imagine, the circumstances under which someone could become an enemy of the state. I don't think Trump's going to do that, but if he does, fucking end him. So here we go. Stephen Wormiel. God, what a terrible name. Why do law professors have terrible names? All right. So anyway, this is going back. It's going to delay the fucking, any of the stuff about the election is going to get, any of the January 6th stuff is going to get delayed past the election of Donald Trump, which is funny because if he gets elected, he can maybe pardon himself. And then we'll get a Supreme Court case on whether or not a president can pardon himself. So there we go. But these aren't, to be fair, these aren't easy questions, but that's because the hypotheticals under which a president is assassinating his political rivals have to be absurd. They have to, because those are the only circumstances under which they would occur. All right. Let's talk about this obstruction case. SCOTUS, obstruction. So let's pull up the takeaways from the Supreme Court's decision on January 6 charges and what it means for Donald Trump. All right. This is a couple days ago, but I was streaming about other stuff. Excuse me. Burping up meatballs. Supreme Court on Friday. Let's make this bigger. Oh, Amy Coney Barrett can't take the enlargement. Supreme Court on Friday limited the power of prosecutors to pursue obstruction charges against those who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. No. Not against those who rioted, but against those who protested. In fact, that's the whole point, is that if they engaged in a riot for the actual purposes of obstruction, then they can be prosecuted. All right. Narrowing a law that could have tacked years on the sentences of hundreds of defendants. And as a brief aside, this law was created to stop people from using white collar crime to obstruct official proceedings, like to literally stop people from hacking in to the system, so to speak, and fucking people over, fucking like the Congress up. It's amazing. The decision had implications for former President Donald Trump, who was charged with the same crime, though that impact appeared to be more limited than some initially predicted. Two Trump nominees, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, joined the majority. At issue was a law in the wake of the Enron scandal in 2001 that bars people from obstructing an official proceeding. Biden administration argued that the counting of electoral votes in Congress that was interrupted by a mob of Trump supporters counted. Supreme Court kind of agreed. They said that that type of proceeding is official, but they say you got to prove that they actually intended to obstruct it and did. Here's some key takeaways from the decision. Charges against Trump not likely affected. People who push their way into the Capitol aren't the only ones who are facing the charge. Special counsel Jack Smith also charged Trump with the same crime. But even before the court's decision was handed down, Smith made clear that the charges based on different circumstances in Trump's case. Those charges were based on Trump's attempt to organize and send a slate of fake electors to Congress. Actions that look a lot more like the evidence tampering that was targeted by the obstruction law. It does look more like that, although completely fucking different. I mean, well, it looks more like that. Yes, because it involved paper and not physical intrusion onto the Capitol grounds. It looks different and more like the other one that involved paper or e-paper. Yeah, but it not quite the same though. And the funny thing is, Trump's official acts, preparing and organizing a slate of fake electors, might be an official act of the president. Because how did he do it? Hey, maybe you guys should gather and get like another slate of electors going, just in case these other ones fail. We think they're going to fail. They're not real electors. There's some fraud that happened. We found fraud. We're trying to prove it. We're going to show the world that there was fraud. So you should have a backup ready. And they're like, aha, he fooled Mike Pence, but he didn't. That's the funny thing. He didn't fool Mike Pence. He didn't fool anybody. Nobody listened to the fake electors that everybody's so worried about. You can just picture this. It's like, everybody's like, what about Liam, especially Liam? Oh my God. He's probably, Liam, please try not chafing. Lubricate often for this one. If Donald Trump prepared a slate of fake electors and sent them, and everybody's so mad about it, why didn't it work? Why didn't it work? Oh, that's right. Because you have to get to a level of absurdity and disambiguation from reality that we had to go, they thought they could fool Mike Pence with fake electors. They thought they could defraud the system or the processes that were in place. The attempt to defraud was so blatantly not an attempt to defraud that it was embarrassing. None of it was done in secret. None of it was done surreptitiously. Everybody knew it was happening. They're all like, yeah, we should probably put together these alternate electors because there's a constitutional fucking deadline on when these things need to be submitted. And we're wondering what happens if a state changes its minds on a slate of electors because they find out that there was significant fraud that overturned the state's results. What are they going to do if they've recalled the electors that they sent, but don't have another slate of electors to replace them with? And that's outside of the constitutional timelines. How do we deal with that? I don't know. Nobody knows. There isn't an answer on this. Maybe what we should do is prepare a slate of electors that follows at least the constitutional timelines, and the state can retroactively approve that slate of electors when they withdraw the other ones. Maybe they can do this. Maybe they can't. We don't know. It's never really been tried, but we got to do something, and we want to try and follow the Constitution as best as possible. That's what happened. It was vocal. No one was surprised that it happened. No one was taken off guard. Mike Pence wasn't like, oh my God, I'm drowning in fake elector slates. That is such a dumb narrative. And yet everybody's out there running with it like, oh, he almost defrauded. He could have rigged the whole thing. No, if Trump could have prepared a slate of fake electors and pressured the vice president into becoming president, Trump would have won. But he didn't. Not a single slate of fake electors made it. None of them were counted. Not one. Because there's a process to follow for counting electors. It's not like they're like, oh, whoops. Oh my God, I've got 2 for New Hampshire. Let me read them both. Why do people think like this? Why do people act like this? Look, I think everybody involved in government is effectively barely functioning. They're the dumbest people you run into. I think that. And I'm still like, you wouldn't have fooled them with this plan. The only way this plan worked, the only way the fake elector plan could have feasibly worked was if Mike Pence decided that the electors that came in merited a return to their own states for review. And then those states chose to recall that slate of electors and adopt the alternate slate, which would happen only upon objection and a second by a member of the House, and then deliberations by the House and voting on the fucking slate of electors. Because there's actually a process to do this. It exists. And it never worked. Like, it never works. I mean, it has in the past on a couple counting results, various points in history, but it doesn't generally work. The Democrats in 2016 objected to so many slates of electors, but they could never muster the votes after deliberations. So they could never overturn the slate of electors. They all did it. And the Republicans started to, but Republicans stopped to once the January 6th people busted into the Capitol. And once that shit got cleared out, no more objections. They didn't object to Wisconsin. There were a couple others later in the alphabet that they might have gotten to and might have, they wouldn't have, but they might have gotten the votes to overturn those electors. They didn't. But that's the only way it would work. There's a process for the adoption of the electors. There's a process for the objection to the electors. The question was simply, what happens if, like, we think maybe there's fraud and we think maybe we can convince people that the fraud happened with evidence, and we want them to be able to withdraw those electors that were fraudulent and have a constitutionally recognizable other slate. But it didn't happen. So nothing happened. Now we're like, crime. Where? Who was harmed? Who was injured? Liam says, that is a fucking lie. Stop lying. Well, stop listening to Destiny about this topic. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Here we go. Rob Price says, hey, Nick, so far getting F'd by WCB. They're delaying my back surgery and things are getting worse. How can these assholes get away with fucking over people and letting them live in excruciating pain? Dude, I don't know. I'm sorry, man. Lots of that out there. Okay. Anyway, Smith has argued in court filings that the charge against Trump should survive even if the court ruled the way it did, pointing particularly to the indictment's allegations about the fraudulent electors' plots. Supreme Court's opinion did not address the fake elector scheme specifically, but Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, nodded to the possibility that the obstruction statute would be violated by creating false evidence rather than altering incriminating evidence. That line could prove to be a significant problem for Trump. Except it's not false evidence. Like the alternate electors were not evidence of other official electors. They were sitting in wait. They were laying in wait to be adopted. Could they be adopted? Here's the hard question. Here's the hard question for the Trump camp. Could a state adopt an alternate slate of electors? We don't know. The states have plenary authority over sending the electors. They set the time, place, and manner of the choosing of electors. They have that power. It's why they're the ones who send it. It's not really challengeable in the Supreme Court. So the question is, if a state has plenary authority to do this, can they undo it and redo it? Now, I know what Destiny argued with me and what a bunch of people out there say. They say, no, there's rules. There's rules. They got to be in the Capitol building at the state. The state has rules. The state has rules, but the state can't necessarily create rules that restrict its own constitutional authority, because the Constitution grants the power to the state's legislature. And that state's legislature chooses the electors and sends that slate of electors to the vice president. How can we then say that a former Congress of a state can prevent a future Congress from choosing electors a different way? We can't. We can't say that. The Constitution would supersede state law, potentially, possibly, maybe even probably. But do we know the answer? No. No, like so many things, we don't know. Should they be able to? Maybe. Should they be able to? Maybe not. I don't know. It's never been decided. We maybe should figure that out, or like put forth an amendment or something. I don't know. Maybe we should just clarify it. We could do that and eliminate the confusion, but nobody wants to, because they probably want to. Like, I guarantee you, if Donald Trump wins or loses, it doesn't matter whether he wins or loses with the fake electors thing. A Democrat in the future will try this, unless we clarify by a constitutional amendment that it can't be done or change the process. It will be tried again, because we just don't fucking know. Why can the president choose a new slate of electors? He can't. That's the funny thing. He can't do it. That's what you're missing. Because if he could, he would be elected president right now. Liam, buddy, how fucking dumb are you? If Trump could choose the new slate of electors, he would still be president, because he would have chosen the ones that favored him. But he couldn't. He could organize alternate slates of electors. They would have to be chosen by the states and read by the vice president. That's the process. How is this hard for you? Why should the president be able to do this? Well, he can't. But he did. No, he didn't. If he did, he would have been president. He would have just won. Every president. Well, I don't like these. Let me go. That's like going through the deck and picking out the aces. Like, I got four of a kind every time. Supreme Court. Yeah. Trump celebrates anyway and looks to immunity ruling, which we now know that Trump wins heavily at the immunity ruling. Politically, though, the former president was frequently sought to undercut the criminal justice system. Everyone should always think to undercut the criminal justice system, but no one on earth can credibly claim that Trump frequently seeks to undercut the criminal justice system. Trump is not an anti-law enforcement candidate. He's not an anti-law and order candidate. Trump took to social media to describe the decision as a big win, but even within Trump world, there was recognition that the impact may be limited for the former president. Likely best case scenario, an advisor to Trump's legal team told CNN, is that the new ruling weakens the obstruction charges rather than prompting the charge to be dismissed. That narrowing might not even happen until appeal, the advisor said, adding that they did not expect the new ruling to delay the trial proceedings the way the pending immunity dispute could. And we now know that the immunity dispute will push those things back because they're going to have to argue that the slate of electors is not an official act of the president. But if the president is charged with protecting the integrity of election and the president finds fraud and the president organizes a way for an alternate slate of electors to be chosen. Sorry. If that happens, seriously, microphone, what you doing? What you doing, girl? If that happens, that might be an official act of president. It might not. We won't know. They have to argue all of this stuff. So it'll be great. Liam says, so the president can just pressure that vice president to do anything, and as long as they don't capitulate, it's legal? Probably, dude. Yes. But it's not anything, is it? It's, hey, Mike, I think you should maybe look at this election. There's some fraud here, we think. Remember that Mike Pence was on board the election integrity train 2 days prior? Stump speech with Donald Trump down in Georgia, right? Wasn't that like just 2 days prior to January 6th, or like maybe it was a week prior, something like that? Mike Pence was on board with the potential for fraud. He just never fully committed to it. That's why Trump said he was disloyal, turned his back on him, whatever it was. But it's not like out of the blue for Trump to be like, well, Mikey boy, we've been through a lot together, quite a bit, some whipped cream in weird places, but now I think it's time to finally bro up and put this fraud to bed. And Mike's like, the only thing I'm putting to bed is your presidency. And that's that. But pressuring Mike Pence. Oh my God, he's so scared. What is Trump going to do to Mike Pence? What is Trump going to do? Mike, I need you to read this alternate slate of electors. You know, Mr. President, I'm not going to do that. Well, you're fired. Yeah, we both are. Like, what's he going to do to him? Well, I have the military come and they'll turn you trans and Biden will probably appoint you general. At the very least, those attempts could further delay a possible trial in the case, which is already at risk of not happening before the election. Far more important for Trump is the Supreme Court's pending decision on immunity, blah, blah, blah. But this is really what matters, though. It's not Trump's charges. It's the other people involved, the January 6th people who are out there who are getting obstruction charges. And let's be honest about why. Let's be honest. Why are they getting charged the way they are? Because the government was really scared. Government was really scared that the populace reminded the government that the populace exists. The government wants to govern you. They will govern you by request, coercion, and ultimately force. Eventually lethal force. That's the order. I want you to be governed this way. Look, I need you to be governed this way. Otherwise, you're going to get something bad. Or say, hey, I'll give you something good if you're governed this way. Like driving privilege, whatever it is, right? Whatever the government gives you to get you to do something. Then it's force. Well, you didn't get governed the way I like. Now you go to jail. And then it's lethal force. Well, you're not complying with us sending you to jail. So blam, 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 you're dead, right? That's kind of the chain of governance and how it goes. It's a natural chain. It's how it has to work. But when the populace goes, hey, we don't like how the government is being run here, and in sufficient numbers show a level of disobedience to the government to remind the government that they're actually supposed to obey the populace, they get rattled, they get scared really quickly. Now, government already has a penchant for adding charges for multiple reasons. One, they throw as much as they can against a defendant straight out the gate. That's just a matter of course. Now, they may pare it back or pare it down if they can't prove something or if evidence comes to light that makes it really hard to make their case. Sure. Typically, though, they overcharge. And here's why they overcharge. The bigger the threat to the defendant, the better the deal the government gets out of the plea. The defendant doesn't have leverage on a plea deal. I mean, they have some, right? You can embarrass the government. There's some sanctions if the government acts too unethically. But by and large, a prosecutor holds almost all the cards in a plea agreement because a judge isn't going to throw the prosecutor in jail. It will throw you in jail, right? That'll happen. So the government has a lot of leeway to do this. So they overcharge, and they're not punished for overcharging most of the time. There are occasions where gross overcharging has led to someone somewhere getting some relief from the government and maybe some punishment to prosecutors, but usually not. It gives them extra leverage going into negotiations. Now, does that leverage always amount to a better outcome for the government? No. Just because you have leverage doesn't mean it's always effective, but it's why they do it. Because you can scare the accused with more and more charges and longer punishments, even if they're not sustainable, even if the evidence is thin, because there's always a puncher's chance that the government wins, no matter how bad their case is. Because there's always a possibility a jury just finds you guilty and fuck you. Now, maybe you win on appeal, maybe you don't. That's on your life. Like, that's your life being taken away. And the government's not going to be punished for that ever. When people go to prison falsely for like 30 years and then a DNA test, confirms, you see these stories like they've been in prison for murder for 30 years. DNA test now confirms that they weren't the killer. And they get out and it's like, here you go. You're out now. Sorry that 3 decades went by. You don't have an employment or credit history. Good luck out there, champ. You're not guilty, though. That's it. That's what happens. That's the punishment the government got for doing that. So government holds the leverage. So they overcharge all the time. It's useful for them. Rarely are they punished. More often than not, it's just beneficial for government and bad for the person. Now, the obstruction charges in this case go a little further than the normal overcharging because this case, as we've seen, the January 6th defendants have been maltreated by government the entire time because of the quote unquote egregiousness of their actions. The government really hated a bunch of people saying, hey, the government's fucking up here. And so they're like, you don't stand up to government and not get punished. So they're punishing them extra hard. And there are people who were sitting outside of the Capitol building who are getting multi-year sentences in prison. It's like, well, did they hit anybody? No. What did they do? Well, they sat on a fence and they chanted. How long did they get? I don't know, like 7 years. Like, holy shit. So these obstruction charges are part of the normal overcharging process, but the particularly vindictive overcharging that has plagued the January 6th thing, that's what this is really about. So the opinion gives the Justice Department room to refile cases against at least some rioters accused of obstruction because it will continue to allow them to prosecute in situations in which people attempted to impact documents and other things used in official proceeding. So going back to the original scope of the law, it's about the paper, baby. Approximately 249 cases involving the obstruction charges are pending, and in every one of those cases, the defendant faces other charges, including felonies and misdemeanors. About 52 people were convicted and sentenced with the obstruction charge as their only felony. Of those, 27 people are currently incarcerated, according to prosecutors. So these 27 people are incarcerated. They're in federal prison. They're in federal prison because of this obstruction charge, which may not be valid against them at all. Cool. Good job. Thanks, overcharging government. Their only felony was the obstruction charge. Overcharging wins the day on that one. That means they may have had a misdemeanor trespass or something like that. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the only crime, but the only felony. Justice Department has taken steps for months in its prosecutions of rioters to shore up the obstruction charges that include showing evidence to juries of the electoral vote boxes being removed from the Senate floor. That could help prosecutors sustain charges by establishing that some of the defendants had as their goal an attempt to tamper with the records. See, that's the thing. It's not just that they mess with paper. They have to show the intent to tamper with the paper. Like, it can't just be incidental. Not like, oh, like this guy's boot print was left on it as he walked on the paper as he, proceeded by. Remember, criminal charges always require some type of intent. Almost. No, always. Even strict liability ones like possession of child pornography. Like, you have to intend to possess the thing. In a statement after the opinion was released, Attorney General Merrick Garland said he was disappointed because the ruling limited a law intended to ensure that the most responsible for that attack face appropriate consequences. But that's not true. That law was not intended to ensure that those most responsible for the January 6th attack would face appropriate consequences. That law was intended for 2001 in Enron. Garland also maintained that the number of people whose sentences could be significantly reduced is likely relatively small. So rioters who are serving time or awaiting trial are likely to go back to a trial court to seek review. And then those will get appealed up if they don't win. Because, hey, make the government prove their case. Still, let's see. At least one federal judge in D.C. on Friday said she would be resentencing rioters convicted of obstruction, according to court records. So, yeah, going to get probably a lot of sentence reductions. What I predict we'll see on the sentencing side of this from the trial courts is a reasonable reduction in sentences, which will not be a full reduction on the obstruction charge. What they'll do is they'll try and split the baby somewhere. They'll meet in the middle. And the reason they'll do this is because judges often will give a haircut to one side or the other when they're ruling in their favor. It's like if you're ruling in favor of one party, you'll take 10% off of what you're going to give them, for example. And that makes the judge look contemplative. Right? Well, they're not just giving the maximum. They're not just following a rule. They're applying the judge's reasonable discretion to the issue. So I'm guessing we're going to see something like that in regards to the sentencing adjustments that come on the January 6th obstruction charges, because that's kind of how judges just operate. It's an easy way to do it, and it makes it harder to appeal. And that's what they really want. They want to reduce the number of appeals. They want to reduce the amount of crow and shit that the fucking district courts and the district court judges have to eat. And they want to keep themselves away from impeachability because they want to stay judges. They have a lifetime appointment. It's a pretty sweet gig. So they just go ahead and make sure that their rulings aren't impeachable, and they make them look reasonable enough that they're not going to sit there and get stuck having their ruling appealed and come back and have to redo it over and over again. And eventually, right, like, their own legacy does matter to them. I mean, they're hard to remove, but it's not impossible. And political pressure isn't always, do you get to keep your job? People do protest outside of judges' houses. People do become hostile towards judges. I'm never encouraging any of that behavior or anything like that. But there can be a judge who gets sufficiently ridiculous that people may do something, and judges know that. I mean, they make these rulings in the real world. It's a shame. They're supposed to be insulated from that. We want judges to rule free of fear. I talked about this in the in the context of like Sandy Hook and the assault weapons bans. When judges are deciding Second Amendment issues in the wake of a mass shooting, I also talked about it in the election interference cases, but so in the wake of a mass shooting or in the wake of election interference, if a judge rules that assault weapons get to stay on the streets, and I know assault weapons aren't real, okay? I know AR is Armalite. I got it. All right. But if a judge is saying, well, I'm going to ban this category of weapons we're going to call assault weapons, or they're saying we're not going to do that, and then one of those weapons gets used in a mass shooting the next day and kills, like, their niece or their grandson or something like that, they have to live with that decision that they rendered that allowed that to happen. Even though it's not really allowing it to happen, they'll bear that with them. Same thing with the election interference cases. If any judge had overturned a state, which subsequently overturned the entire nation in Trump v. Biden, and switched the election from Joe Biden to Donald Trump based on one decision, even if it was the right decision, that judge has to go grocery shopping the next day. And roughly on average, half of the people will hate him. Half of everybody he encounters. And if any of them are unhinged, he's either going to like be killed, or like a post-op will throw a bloody, axe wound tampon at him, and that'll be gross. But if that like judges still exist in the real world, we want to insulate them from that fear and from the public ridicule so they can make their decisions. But we also get to ridicule them. Unfortunately, ridicule can turn into murder, and that's very scary. We don't want that, but it can happen. And so judges are always considering these things. So that's going to be their considerations on January 6th, though. Of course. It's going to be their considerations on all this stuff. Like, is my ruling going to get me impeached? Is my ruling going to get me murdered? If both those are no, they'll make the ruling. If one of those is yes, they're going to think about it. That's reasonable. Ice Dancer says, Nick, stop. I'm having Destiny debate flashbacks. Bell Curve Killer, thanks for the sticker. He also says, great stuff. Thanks. Hey, very much appreciated. Most Band Queen says, Sonichu, did you know it's is hurricane season now? Sonichu can plead spare Ralph from the storm just this once. Oh, please, I think you mean. We know he is insufferable, but we need him for the lulls. So there you go. That was your... Oh, that's your Scooby-Doo thing. You're getting it better. Sonichu. No, but still, it was Sonichu. Why do you keep saying Sonichu? Sonichu. Just do that one. Scooby-Dooby. Sani Nani Chu. Like make it very anime, I think. Well, with that, guys, I think we're going to wrap up the show. I covered the two main topics I wanted to talk about. Trump's immunity is obvious. It was the obvious ruling. It was a ruling that seemed most likely from the start. It mirrors the civil immunity that he already had. The January 6th obstruction stuff. Amy Coney Barrett actually broke ranks on this one, and she thought that the obstruction law was fine. It's not. The law was not intended for that, and part of this is the ability of someone seeing a law, like a reasonable person seeing a law, being able to predict if they're going to be guilty by doing an act. Like that's how we want criminality to work. Criminality isn't negligent. Criminality is intentional. And so we want someone to look at a law and go, I'm not doing that, so I should be okay. Now, I know it's not that simple, right? But that's what we want, ideally, from the law. So Amy Coney Barrett saying a law should be able to expand beyond its original intent. I don't know, man. I'm not eager to expand federal power or state power in charging and prosecuting the citizenry. I personally, and this is before my biased reasoning, but I really think that we should be very fucking careful with giving government the reins to removing liberty at any higher rate than they already have. Why people consistently want government to keep making laws and to keep finding ways to police and punish us is baffling to me. You know who can become a politician in this country? Anyone and everyone. It's the American dream. That means every dumb fucking retard that you encounter could be in charge of your liberty someday. Oh my God, don't give them reins, give them rope and hope that they hang themselves instead of you. Do not grant these dummies any power. And if you think politicians are smart, just go talk to one. The odds of you running into a genius politician are worse than you running into a genius at a Down syndrome center. Man, it is embarrassing how they get elected because they're always the type of people you don't want to be in charge of anything, because they're often people who aren't in charge of anything. That's why they're politicians now. Remember, AOC was a bartender, and I bet she was bad at it. And now she's in charge of writing laws that put you in jail. Yay! So no, we shouldn't have expansive authority on the writing and drafting of laws to then become for a purpose that they were not originally intended for. The original intent of the law matters. Now, is the subsequent use of the law in specific theme with it where we're not really like, we're modernizing it. Sure. Maybe it's not a piece of paper, but maybe it's now digital because everything works off of digital paper rather than physical paper. Okay, cool. This law was actually about digital paper. So we're going backwards and saying it's physical papers, I guess. But that kind of at least makes sense. But if you just say people yelling, because this is what they wanted. They wanted the obstruction charge to equate to people being in the building and yelling was the same as someone hacking the fucking government and changing documents. That's not the same thing. Me going in and yelling at Congress should be a goddamn right. You know why? They deserve to be yelled at. They're congressmen because they weren't yelled at enough as children. Yell at them now. Make them cry. January 6th made them cry. Listen to their horror stories as they're insulated, surrounded by Capitol Police in a fucking cement bunker where no one can get to. No one has any guns coming after them. And they'll talk to you as if they were on the front lines for done, right? Drowning in mud, coming over the fucking trench line to be mowed down by German machine guns. No, you weren't. You're in one of the most secure buildings on earth with a bunch of dudes with guns and plenty of people nearby who could come and sweep the hallways with automatic weapons and just clean it out. And the only reason they didn't just walk through the hallways mowing down the January 6th rioters is because it would have looked really fucking bad on CNN the next day to have a fucking massacre in the halls of Congress. That's it. That's what saved all of you from being Ashley Babbitt or whatever. That's what saved everyone. Remember the fucking shitstorm the government got for Babbitt, right? How much that incensed people that one person got shot. Imagine if they had swept the room with a rifle. They could have just mowed people down with a minigun in a hallway. Cleaned up that problem real fast. But it would have looked really bad if they did. But they could have. They could have done that. And they didn't. But these congressmen are acting like they couldn't do that. Like, oh my God, no one's going to stop them. Well, one, no one really needed to stop them. No evidence that they actually would have enacted actual violence against actual politicians. Someone might have tried, and there was someone there with a gun to stop them every fucking time. But we get to pretend that they were these helpless children. So yell at them like helpless children. Like they yell at those children in the African commercials for like the charity. They're like, get more flies on your eyes, you little starving bastard. Like, you don't get a sandwich till after the shoot's done. I hope the flies eat that too. Yell at Congress all day. Maybe don't do it from inside the building after like some people were hitting Capitol Police. Probably not the best idea. I'm not advising trespass. But let's stop pretending that these Congress people should not fear the people. As I've said before, government should always fear the people. A government that's not in fear of its own populace is a tyrant. And its legitimacy should be ignored. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a good night. Thanks for hanging out with me. Ron Vitter says, if you believe politics is foolish, you'll be governed by fools. Guys, check out my locals, recadalaw.locals.com. Some locals content is coming, like probably tomorrow. Catch you then. Peace. I don't have an outro anymore, so I'll just go away. Peace.